Screenagers, we are finally back. Season 7 of the Canon. You've been waiting for it patiently, and we're finally here. We're ready to jump back in to some essential movies. We have an amazing slate of movies that we're going to be talking about this season. We have about 30 movies that we're going to be chatting. Very excited to talk about all of them. But again, welcome back to the Canon, your favorite movie podcast. As always, we are the one and only movie podcast providing you with a watch list of the most essential movies ever made. My name is Raf, and we have yet another essential movie lined up for today. We're going to be talking Saving Private Ryan to kick off season 7. Very excited for it. Very excited for the guests who we have joining us today. Two I don't want to say long time, but two folks who have been contributing to Screen Age Wasteland for a while, but two folks who are making their canon first appearances. So Tyler and Thomas, welcome to the show, guys. How are we doing?
Doing good. Thanks so much for having us. Always a pleasure. And couldn't have picked a better movie to just go off on, especially for a season opener. This is a great one. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think there's no, especially at the start of a new season, and just like to come in on such an iconic film is just like really exciting.
So we're going to be talking openers for sure. I feel like that's it. Kind of feels like a on brand thing to be talking about with this movie. We're opening the season with it. Obviously, you can't talk about Saving Private Ryan without the opening sequence of that movie. So it all feels kind of fitting. Uh, Before we get into the movie itself, just some housekeeping stuff about what to expect this season of the canon. So like I said, we have 30 or about 30 movies that we're going to be talking. The sequence of episode releases is not set. So unlike other seasons where we sort of know ahead of time what we're going to be talking about and when we're going to be talking about them, we have a slate of movies, and we're gonna get to them between now and 30 weeks from now. Um, a slightly different approach that we're taking this season. So typically, movies that we talk about already have a written canon entry on screenagewasteland.com as part of that canon series. All the movies that we're going to be talking about now, no written entries. No one wants to write about them. Not sure why, because they're all amazing movies. So these episodes will serve as the official canon entry for all of these movies, which is super exciting. This is going to be the official documentation of what makes these movies essential for Screen Age Wasteland. So, guys, no pressure, but this is the definitive version, definitive conversation, definitive text about Saving Private Ryan when it comes to Screen Age Wasteland.
Cool.
So take that and do with it what you will.
I don't think it's going to be difficult to toot this film to the highest degree. So
Kind of surprising that no one wanted to write about this movie. I feel like this would have been one that everyone would line up for to
mm,
write the canon entry, but I guess not. But we're here to chat about it. Before we get into the movie, because like we said, both of you have been writing with us for a little bit. Thomas, I think you've been contributing to the site a little bit longer, but what's how did you guys come to find the Wasteland? How have you enjoyed contributing? What are some of the favorite reviews that you guys have written? Just give us a little bit of a little bit more, so the folks get to know both of y'all as guests before we jump into the movie.
cool. Yeah. Yeah. So I've been writing for about 2 years now. I discovered the Wasteland on Twitter. I refuse to call it X. It's still Twitter. Um, and yeah, it just was like, here's my letterbox. If you are interested, I'd love to be a contributor. And yeah, it's been great. It's been so cool to do the sort of 150 word listed entries with, I think my first one was like 100 Disney villains or 50 Disney villains. And that was like, from there, it just went on. So it's been cool to also just contribute small chunks.
Mhm.
and then to go, and I think I wrote my first major review at the beginning of this year. So it's also been really cool to sort of progress in that regard as well, and just find this community of people that just love movies. It's like, I think it's like, but what's the angle, or what's, how are we different? And I think it's just like it's just run by passion, and so that's what's been really great to discover, is just everybody's passion and disagreements when it comes to films, because we're not always going to agree, right?
The disagreements are pretty fun.
Yeah,
Was I think I saw, was Hoppers your first review that you wrote this year, or was there
yeah,
something else?
yeah. It was
Also,
Hoppets.
I see that you did Project Hail Mary, which
I
I
did.
haven't seen, but I
Ah,
do really want to see. So I'm holding off on reading that review until I watch that movie. But that was one of
I
like my most anticipated movies for this year because I love that book.
Oh my gosh, yeah. The book I read last year, and I've seen it 3 times in cinemas. Saw it in IMAX and 2 times after that. Like, I'm like campaigning for this film. Like, everybody that will listen to hear me rant about Project Hail Mary, I'm just like, go and see it. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's, oh man, it's gonna be hard to knock it off number one, although there are a few contenders coming out later on in the year. But for now.
hell yeah, I love that 3 times in theaters. Um, Tyler, what about you?
Yeah, I'm much newer. I think I joined right at the middle of March of this year. And I actually had been reading the page for a bit. I a while back had just found a bunch of more independent film sites, just because I like reading some of the bigger ones. Like I always read David Ehrlich and IndieWire and some of the stuff on RogerEbert.com. But I do like seeing more smaller perspectives, just from writers that are, I mean, not quite as lofty, but just like I feel realistic and stuff like that. And I liked all the fun lists going on the Screen Age page. And after a while, I was like, I should just try my hand. I loved Letterbox as well. I'm on Letterbox. My every day at like 2 a.m., my phone goes, "You haven't opened Letterbox. You should open it now," just because it's burned into me, I think, at this point. So I love writing reviews and stuff like that. So it was fun to jump in. I jumped in right during Tarantino month, which was a great time. My first assignment was to write 3 write-ups for 3 fantastic Tarantino characters: Ordell Robbie from Jackie Brown, Daisy Domergue from Hateful Eight, and Alabama Whitman from True Romance. So it was just so much fun just to kind of give a little bit on these great characters. And then I got to do a Hateful Eight review as my first full one, and that was a great opportunity just to rewatch it again. I hadn't seen it since it first came out. And I was a little lower on it this time than I expected to be, which surprised myself a little bit. But it's been fun to reconsider these and kind of watch a movie in a full kind of review mindset, to like really analyze and think about, okay, how can I kind of talk about this more, or kind of what does this further mean? And it's been a lot of fun. I did a few for some of the more recent horror movies, like Faces of Death and They Will Kill You. I have one on Lee Cronin's The Mummy, hopefully coming out this weekend. So it's been
Nice.
fun. I gotta say, it's been keeping me busy, and I mean, I was gonna watch the movies anyway, so
Yeah.
it's just been fun to kind of keep up with it. And meeting all of you guys, or as much as I've met so far, has been so great, because it is just like you said, Thomas. It's just like finding a community of people that love movies is just feels like where I belong. As someone who has a few film friends here at home, but like, not a big, my family's not huge into film, and I don't have a lot of other connections that are so tied into it. It's always nice just to find people that are so passionate, and that's all they want to talk about, because that's all I want to talk about. So yeah, it's been great so far. I really appreciate being brought on. It's just been a great time.
It's so fun that we have this community of film people, and we're, all across the globe.
Mm.
Thomas is in South Africa, Tyler's in Boston. We have Duke in Canada. We have folks all across the states and elsewhere. It's super fun, having this community. It's it's so great. Thinking about, you know Tarantino month, and we don't have to get into it too much, but I did read, Thomas, your review of Django, and loved
Mhm.
it. Loved how you were thinking about that movie. And Tyler, I really enjoyed how you were thinking about, the Hateful Eight. I really liked both of those reviews, and all of the reviews for all of the Tarantino movies that we were sort of looking back on during Tarantino
Mm.
month. I will take a quick moment to plug a write up that I did for Tarantino month because it was one of my favorite things that I've written in a while. I did
Nice.
not write a review of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I did write an editorial arguing that that movie is easily his worst project.
I love that article because I couldn't agree with you more. Every single line I was like, he nailed it. Like,
It was yeah, I'm looking forward to the next time we do sort of a director retrospective on the website. I would assume that we'll do like Nolan or something
that was what
over the
I was
summer.
thinking.
A Spielberg one would be fun.
Mm,
Yeah,
Someone could write
with
about,
Disclosure Day coming out too. Yeah,
yeah, with that coming out, we could revisit some of his work, including Saving Private Ryan.
great segue.
So
there it is.
I've been doing this for a few years, so but yeah, let's get into Saving Private Ryan a little bit. What a movie! This was an interesting one to rewatch for me, but curious for the two of you, what you both thought of this movie. What sort of stood out to you guys as something that was key, or that you maybe didn't pick up on the first time that you watched it, or the first few times that you watched it? I assume that you have both seen this movie before, and this wasn't your first time getting into it. But yeah, curious what this time around really stood out to you guys, and like kind of comparing that to some previous viewings, maybe the first time that you watched it, and what stood out to you initially. Is it the same thing? Is it different things? Just let's just use that as a jumping off platform.
Mm. Yeah, I think like going, you can't. I mean, I didn't watch it when it came out in 1998, but so I discovered it a couple of years later, and even going into it uh, not knowing anything, you've heard about the opening beat sequence. Like you can't. I think it's just so part of like film discourse at this point. Like everybody's heard of it, even if they haven't seen it. So that was something that I was looking forward to the first time that I watched it, and remember like literally holding my breath for the first 20 minutes of that movie. It's like and so revisiting it, you know, you always wonder to what extent it's still gonna like impact you. um yeah, there were a few moments where I was just like, I don't know if I've like, just because of trauma, like blocked it out of mind. Um, but to actually rediscover it, not remember which of the characters makes it to the end as well, was so interesting. I think this is probably the third time that I watched it. And there's been years in between. So it's not like it's been quite recent. And so to go into the third act and just be like, I actually can't remember who makes it out, which was like really refreshing because that's very rare when you're rewatching a film. So that for me was super cool to just rediscover in a repeated viewing.
Yeah, kind of allowing yourself to be fully swept up by the story, and like, going along for the ride with the different emotions of which characters are making it and which characters aren't making it, and sort of being surprised by that, which is, obviously sad while you're watching the movie, but also exciting that you can
Yeah,
sort of like give yourself over to a movie in that sense, even if it's a movie that you have seen before.
yeah.
Um, which is, yeah, that's a super interesting kind of viewing experience. I love that. Yeah, Tyler, what stood out for you
Yeah,
this
it's funny. I had a very similar experience. I didn't watch it a few years after 1998 because that was the year I was born. So it took me a little bit to get to it. So I believe I saw it when I was like 15 or 16. I know a lot of people saw it in high school, which I'm actually like, I remember my friends telling me like, oh, we watched that opening scene in like our social studies class, and I remember like, what? Like that's crazy. Um, I mean, I'm sure they had to sign a permission slip or something, but I saw it with my parents just at home. I think that I was getting into Spielberg a bit, and this was just one my parents had liked, and I was like, they were like, yeah, let's watch Saving Private Ryan, and they had told me ahead of time that like this opening scene is going to be pretty brutal, like it's war stuff, so you know it's going to be kind of gross, and I mean like this is my third time as well with it, and man, I that is it. You said it. You hold your breath the whole time. Like you don't. I feel like I don't breathe until they finally move on to the next scene, when they finally walk off
Mm.
the beach and you cut to the sky. I think it's like they cut to the sky a little bit, but like that's the first moment you're like, oh my god, like we just it's like 25 minutes. It goes by like that. It's crazy how it feels because you're just so swept up in it and just the chaos of everything. Um, but yeah, I was glad to come to this again. I'd seen it, I think, in 2024, but that was the first time I'd seen it since all the way back um, when I was 15 or 16, back in like 2014 or so. So it'd been at least 10 years. But yeah, this thing just really holds up so well. I think it is one just so fun to look back and see all these actors that we know so well, and you're like, oh my god, what's he doing here? Like,
Yeah.
it's funny to get it in that sense, but it's just this thing for being 2 hours and 49 minutes. It like just is such a engrossing story the whole way through, and I feel like makes good use of all of that runtime. And I don't think this will ever become a like just menial experience. I think every time I go back to this one, it is just going to be. It's not like exhausting and draining, and not like that kind of movie where you're like, oh, I can't watch this again. At least for me, I know some people probably see that first sequence and they're like, I can't do that again. But I do find I'm always kind of drawn to this one again, and I remember I see scenes of it pop up, and I'm like, oh, I gotta watch Saving Private Ryan again. Like it's just one of those that I do come out feeling powerful about, and I feel like I feel the impact, but without it being this like really negative experience, even though it's a pretty heavy war movie.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
about as heavy as it gets. And I want to, I think we're going to end up spending a lot of time on that opening beach sequence because it's one of the most impressive and effective pieces of filmmaking, in the last 50 years or so,
Yeah.
maybe longer. It's just, it's so insane. There's a reason why everyone talks about it when talking about this movie. Um, I just want to, quickly give this anecdote about the first time that I watched this movie. So, um, I've talked about it before on the show, but my dad is a Vietnam War vet, so I would watch a lot of like war movies with him growing up. So I think I saw this when I was like 10 or 11 for the first
Oh,
time.
Wow.
Um, but I was watching with my dad, and because he had experienced war, he had seen it with his own two eyes. He didn't let me watch the opening sequence,
Mm.
which I think is a fair thing to not let a 10-year-old watch.
yeah.
Um, there's on Screenage Wasteland After Dark, there's going to be an episode coming out where we talk about sex and violence in movies. So this kind of plays into into that conversation.
Mm.
But my dad, he wouldn't let me watch that opening sequence, and he also wouldn't let me watch the scene where Fish dies, where he gets stabbed. Like
Mm.
for him, that was way too brutal for a kid to watch. So I was like familiar with this movie. I was familiar with um, it being a depiction of war, but I didn't have the full picture until I was like in high school. I probably watched in like a US history class, and we were like, okay, we're going to talk about D-Day now. So just watch the opening sequence of Saving Private Ryan,
Wow.
and that's how you'll learn about D-Day or whatever. Um, but coming back to this movie, it's one that I go back and forth on because I'm like, it's an incredible piece of filmmaking, but for all of like my personal thoughts about war, um, it becomes a hard watch. But then it's also kind of a necessary watch, depending on how you look at it. And with that opening sequence, like, do you guys think that the brutality, the violence, do you think that that's like over the top? Do you think it's too grotesque? Do you think it's too stylized? Like, how do you guys read what's going on in that opening sequence, or is it just an effective depiction cinematically of the brutality and chaos of war?
Mm.
Yeah, I think that if the whole movie was followed this thing, I mean, even for if it was like 90 minutes and it followed in that same kind of, here is the intensities of war, battle all the way through, that would not appeal to me nearly as much. I think the fact that we get this true chaotic insanity just for about 25 minutes, and then we get a lot of, there's definitely action in between, but a lot of story in between and a lot of time to process it, that it is just so effective as just being like an opener of just like, here is what the truth of this was, here is what everyone is dealing with, but there are these human stories in there too. And I think that Spielberg finds time to put in the action, and obviously that final battle at the bridge is, it's like 45 minutes. It's long. It's like a long part of the movie, but um, I think that the middle gap is so important to kind of let us sit with the intensity of what we did just see. And I think it's partly stylized, but I also think it's so effective. There's still the one shot I always remember is the guy right at the top of the beachhead. He gets shot in the helmet, and he's like, "Oh my god!" Boom, and then he gets hit. And it's these small little stories that he tells in
Mhm.
these like just crazy sequence that is so impressive to me. That yes, are horribly effective, but they're done so well that I think that it is memorable for a reason, and memorable without being a negative addition to the movie.
Mm. Yeah, I think like similarly, I mean, you said so much of it already, but um I think it's necessary to sort of set the tone of like, this is not a small letter war film. This is a capital letter war film. We're not going to sugarcoat anything. So I do think that there are obviously viewers that'll be like, listen, this was too much. Like I couldn't. But I do think in terms of capturing the absolute chaos that D-Day must have been, and also, I mean, if I think of it, the first shot is just going through in the boats, and like two or three people are like throwing up, and so already it's like this jarring, like, oh gosh, and then like the ramp gets let down, and like eight people within the first 10 seconds are like gunned down, and so there is this brutality, and like that's such a relevant question. Is it too much? And I don't think it is, because as Tyler pointed out, it's like a great film has these ebbs and flows. Yes, we there are certain films that just pull you along, and you've just got to like get get with the program and like grab on
Yeah.
tight, and it just goes. But this isn't one of them. This is one that where the strength lies in that ebb and flow. It's not just one or the other. And because we've got these moments, as you said, Tyler, to breathe, it just makes for such effective storytelling. Because we understand the reality, like as mu- to as much as extent as an audience can that hasn't experienced this for themselves. I think he captures that essence like superbly. It's
Yeah.
got to do with the sound design. It's got to do with the cinematography. It's got to do with, um, I mean, those underwater sequences and the silence, and then
Yes.
the violent noises, and um, the grotesque blood, spilling of blood. I mean, there's the one shot of the guy carrying his own arm because it's just been
Oh.
blown off.
And
Um,
he has to look for it too. He's looking around for it, and he picks it up.
yeah,
Oh
Yeah.
my god.
yeah. So I don't think it is too. I think there are some people that will say it's too grotesque for sure. I
Mhm.
don't think it is, and by the sounds of things, that we all agree.
I mean, it's such an effective piece of filmmaking, to communicate to people, to audience members, like, hey, war is horrific. It is
Mm,
terrifying, and it's chaotic, and it's messy, and you have no idea what's going on. The whole like slow mo, distorted sound, sort of POV shots from Tom Hanks's character, um, are really effective in doing that. The one thing that stood out to me this time around was watching that scene, and right, like it's the first 25 minutes of the movie, and you're like, the first time you watch it, you're like, what the absolute heck am I watching? Like,
mm,
what is this? Um, it's so counter to how it is that we understand movies to operate, right? Like in the first 10 minutes, we're expecting character introductions. We're getting a sense of like who these characters are and like what it is about them that's going to make their journey so interesting. there is nothing that resembles character development in those first 25 minutes. Like,
Yeah.
we're just thrown into the most horrific situation and just have to like sit through that before we can even get to any characters. And like, we're like, okay, who are going to be the main players here? Because I just saw 30 dudes get shot in the chest. I don't know who's going to be a character in this.
Mm.
Yeah, I do always forget though, because I always think that the first shot is the boat. I
Mhm.
forgot that it starts on um, the old man walking up to the grave. And I always this is my one thing with Saving Private Ryan is I don't love the framing device. Um, I think I think that it's what I like about the opening, besides it not starting on the beach, is you immediately think that's Tom. That's I almost said Tom Cruise. You immediately think that that's Tom Hanks. You immediately, like, you see the old man. It doesn't cut to him, but we cut to eventually find Tom Hanks. So you automatically, just through cinematic convention, are like, okay, this is the same guy, and I think that leads to an interesting twist. Um, I honestly think my problem might just be the fade from Matt Damon to old man. That
Mhm.
that honestly takes me out of it every time I see it. We'll get to that, but it is funny that it doesn't start on the beach scene, because watching it this time, I was like, oh my god, what if we just first shot cut from black on the boat? I think that might have been way more effective. Just because, like, you are there is nothing else to think about. There is no other characters to consider at all. Yes, you see Tom Hanks and you're like, okay, we're probably gonna follow this guy because it's Tom Hanks. But I kept thinking about, if we just started on the boat, I think that this might have been just a stronger opening, just to throw you into it. Again, it's Spielberg. It's got to
Yeah.
have the sentimentality angle to it a little bit. I think that it has its benefits. I might just have a problem with that fade, but yeah, it is still incredibly effective. And I remember hearing interviews with World War II veterans that have seen this, and they're like, "Yeah, that's it. That's what I dealt with." And it's crazy to imagine them wanting to go, or just going back and watching or reliving that in any sense. That sounds very traumatic, but it seems like Spielberg paid an insane amount of attention into how this went down, and what really it all looked like. Because there are some really amazing details. One I caught this time is there's one quick shot. I think it's in that montage when Tom Hanks is looking around as he's like just really disheveled, and there's a medic helping somebody, and he gets shot in his side through a water bottle, through his canteen. The canteen pours out all the water, and then the blood starts flowing out because the bullet went through him. It's this incredible small thing that I honestly barely even noticed, but this time I was like, "Whoa, that's so cool! How do you do that?" But it's the care and detail of these small little things that add up to such an overwhelming moment. That's, I think, just, yeah, insanely effective.
Yeah, the I want to come back to all of that because I think there's a lot with Spielberg and his attention to detail and sort of what it is that he wanted to communicate with this movie about this particular war. And I guess, Thomas, not for you, but like for me and Tyler, like America's involvement in the war.
Yeah.
Um, but the framing device is super interesting because it does, when we open with that old man, there's a I think it cuts to like an extreme close up of his
Yeah,
eyes, and then it cuts to, or there's like a cross cut or something to Tom Hanks in the boat, and then it has that, it also
yeah,
starts as an extreme close up and then zooms out to the guys throwing up.
yeah.
So I don't know what it was like for audience members in 1998 where they're like, oh, okay, we're watching Tom Hanks become this old man or something, which makes the Matt Damon fade that much funnier.
Yeah.
But the whole movie, you're supposed to be watching it with like, oh, this guy's so sad that he didn't save this kid's life. So the twist then becomes kind of interesting. I mean, yeah, Thomas, for you, did you were you picking up on that, or because you came to it later and sort of knew, did that not become like a way that you were watching the movie? I wonder if there was an intended twist there and it just like didn't really land with folks because there was so much else to pull from this movie.
I remember viewing it for the first time and knowing that Matt Damon plays Private Ryan. And so when you get to the point where I think it's Nathan Fillion that plays the
Yeah,
other Private Ryan,
it's
I was like, oh, wait, no, that's not what? I'm confused. So I do remember like going into it late, like knowing some of the details that are supposed to be like surprises. But I didn't actually know if he survived, which was a great thing from an audience perspective. But yeah, as Tyler, as you were speaking about the framing device, I was just thinking, I love that they sort of like that extreme close up becomes a bit of a red herring for the audience to be like, you are, oh, this is him. And he's thinking about, as you pointed out, Ref, he's thinking about this mission that he had. And I quite like that device because it begins with humanity, with the human story, with the individual story. um, and I did, when I was making notes for this, I was thinking about how like really big stories like World War II stories are only really effective if you concentrate on the individual story. And so by focusing it on this one man story, whom you think is Tom Hanks, but then it's revealed that it isn't, is actually really clever, because then it's not this war epic. It's something that really carefully balances the huge scale of war and brings that down to the individual, these 8 men, plus Private Ryan, and how it affects them. And I think that's part of why the film is so successful, is because it's telling these individual stories instead of trying to tell this massive narrative.
Yeah. I want to talk about this. Let's pause on this topic for a little bit. But first I want to bring up that this is, I think, the first movie in the Matt Damon surprisingly shows up towards the end of the second act cinematic universe, which surprisingly has a couple of entries in it.
Yeah.
uh,
Yep.
where you're just like, oh shit, Matt Damon's here.
Well, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about Tom Hanks because I think the casting of him in the main role is really, really, really smart, effective casting when we think about what Tom Hanks was as a like movie star figure in terms of someone who we could trust in the 90s, and the movie being about him. And for me, another thing that stood out to me this time is that this movie is really about like nobility and being a leader. And having, if you have anyone besides Tom Hanks, I don't know that it works as much. Um, Especially,
Mm.
for me as someone who doesn't appreciate like glorifying war, I think that this movie does glorify war in a lot of ways, but I think it works because we're glorifying the nobility of this Tom Hanks Miller character, and only works because of who Tom Hanks is, and like the charm and the trustworthiness that he brings to that character. So I'm curious what you guys think about Tom Hanks um, in the central role.
Yeah, you said it. Trustworthiness is such a good word for like how we as audiences have just come to accept Tom Hanks. Like you see him on screen and you're like, that's the guy. That's the best guy right there. He's gonna be a good like. Has Tom Hanks ever done like a role where he is not a good guy? I can't think of one off the top of my. Oh, hit me.
He has. He did Elvis. He plays like the
Oh,
antagonist
I
in
haven't
Elvis.
seen that. Okay, that's right.
And it's so jarring because of this. Like this exact thing. You're like, Tom Hanks, what? What are you doing? Like, it's so weird. It's
Stop being
so weird.
mean to that boy. That's so funny. Yeah. We were kind of already built in to root for him. Like we want him to succeed. We know he's going to be a good guy. He, I don't think like he's done. He doesn't do action. That's not really his forte. So I don't know that I would truly call what he's doing action as much as just like that's just his role. Um, but it's so great how we attach to him and how we follow him, and he's just like a kind of almost like an audience surrogate a little bit. I think Upham also fulfills that function as well as kind of being an audience stand-in. um, but the one scene with Hanks that I think makes it all really come through, is with him as a leader too. Is I think it's after, it's they're taking one of the guns near the second half of the movie, and one of the Brooklyn guy is about to walk off. He's about to leave. He's done, and Sizemore's holding up a gun to him, like ready to shoot him if he walks. And as everyone is just like yelling, 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 Tom Hanks goes, "What's the bid out on me for?" Like, because they've all been wanting to know what he does back home, and he tells them he's a school teacher. Of course he is. Like, it fits perfectly into everything we've known as this character up until then, with how smart he is, how resourceful he is. He has little tricks of like fixing things, and it just comes from a teacher's mindset, which makes so much sense. And he talks about, his hammock in the backyard and his wife clipping the rose bushes in a pair of his old work gloves. And it's just like you see that this man wants to go back home. You see that he is not doing this for the glory. He's not, Colonel Kilgore from Apocalypse Now. This is a man that's has his duty, and he's just doing everything he can until he gets back. And he has one of my favorite quotes in the whole movie, and that is, "Every man I kill, the further away from home I feel."
Mhm.
And
Oof.
every time he says that, I it just resonates with me so much about. And I do think there's a little glorification of war in this, but I think within these characters, you do see that these are not, these just like battle ready fraternity guys that are just gun ho ready to kill any German they see. It's more complicated than that, and I think Hanks shows that so well in his performance.
Mm. Yeah, I think the fact that he's a school teacher, it's like the most, I want to say, like ordinary occupation that you could have. Like everybody on the planet has had a teacher in some way. So he is everybody's teacher, and I just, again, I think it just brings back to like, these are not, Tyler, you said it so well, like these are not like, they're not in it for the glory. They're just men that have been given a task, and they they are trying to do it as effectively as they can and as nobly as they can. Um, and sometimes the noblest thing that you can do in a war context is shoot a man. Like, case in point with the German guy, like Upham should have killed that man, and obviously that has ramifications later on, and it brings into account, Raf, what you've been saying about, yes, is war like for or against war? You can get into really complicated kind of conversations about it, but I think at its core, they're saying like, these are everyday men. Spielberg's trying to say
Mhm.
like, these are everyday men. These are not, yes, some of them will get like awards and honors bestowed on them after that if they make it to the end. But at their core, they are just, it's a guy from Brooklyn, it's a guy from Jersey, it's a teacher from, I think he's, I want to say like Idaho, or like
I think it
Sounds right.
says like Pennsylvania, but I don't know.
No, it is Pennsylvania. Sorry. I was just like, yeah, yeah, Pennsylvania.
Ryan is from Private Ryan's from Iowa.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was
Um,
like, I'm sure somebody's from Iowa.
yeah, there's always a guy from Iowa. But yeah, I mean, it is so interesting what the Tom Hanks character is able to do, and how much like credibility he's able to give this whole war effort, because again, we cast Tom Hanks and we make him a school teacher, and you're like, that is someone who I can get behind 1000%. Like, I would put my life on the line
Yeah.
for Tom Hanks in this movie, you know? It totally makes sense. And then again, when we're thinking about sort of what Spielberg's intended purpose is with this movie, it 1000% makes sense. And like, that's the standard that we should judge the movie on. Uh, on the topic of Tom Hanks, on the topic of this this group of men, Brooklyn boy, Iowa boy, Jersey boy. We got Fish and Carpezzo or whatever, the classic Jewish Italian American connection going on. What do you guys think of this cast? Um, is there one character that stood out to you in particular that was super interesting? Also, is there a death that really stuck with you guys in particular? What did you guys think about the rest of the supporting cast?
Yeah, I think it, it it's so weird because you've got these characters. Some actors are already well known, and some of them are like going to be well known. And so it's always incredible. Like in the middle of this like D-Day beach sequence, you've got all of a sudden you hear a familiar voice and you're like, is that is that Vin Diesel? And then you're like, oh yeah. Like there's Groot before he was Groot, you know, like and Fast and the Furious films. And so it like it kind of takes you out of it. It took me out of it for like a couple seconds, and then I so so he shows up, and then Nathan Fillion shows up, and Ted Danson shows up. And
Branson, yep.
Bryan Cranston
I
shows up
forgot
too.
that one. I
Bryan Cranston. I was also
One
just
arm
like,
Bryan Cranston. Yeah.
yeah, like just this wealth of um current and will be phenomenal actors, which it's surprising in the best way of just like discovering these men along the way. Paul Giamatti is also in it, you know, in that.
We needed a lot
um
more Paul Giamatti.
oh,
yeah.
every movie.
Yeah, for sure. And but I think also, so like it's I was thinking about who I associate, like obviously I think just because I'm thinking about it more critically, who I associate or what roles I associated with each of these actors. um and I mean there's even the one scene with the deaf soldier. I forget the actor's name, but he was in Remember the Titans. And I was like,
Yeah.
dude,
Oh,
that's the Remember the Titans guy. And so there's so many like and again, I think it just reinforces this idea of like the everyman figure.
Mhm.
Like that was who fought wars. And so you're introduced to all of them. But in terms of deaths, Giovanni Ribisi's character, I think, is Wade. Man, that uh, of all of them, it hits. And I was saying like the way he delivers those lines, because he says something about like, I don't want to die, and then he starts crying, and then he said, I want to go home. And I think those lines, they just give you goosebumps or you go cold, because the reality of like this whole situation starts to set in, because obviously over the course of the first act we're introduced to this team of 8 men that are now going to go and find Private Ryan. And so now we get to know through their banter. I mean, just their simple like walking up the hill, once they've been given the mission, and they're walking up just a random hill, but the discussions that they're having just reveals so much about the individual characters, and
Yeah.
how Reuben like hates this idea of like just going to go and find one man. And so we obviously we're learning more about each of these characters. And so by the time you get to like the midpoint, because I think it's about roughly the midpoint, and Wade's character gets shot and killed, I think the fact that he's the medic, and so now he has to tell the guys around him how to save him, when I think in reality he knows that this is not going to work. But how do I do that when the knowledge that I have now needs to be used on me? I think it's so complex and so layered. And I think the the way that those lines are delivered could be seen as quite like a little bit comical. Um, because there's this grown man that's like all of a sudden, but he's really scared. But because Spielberg's put in the work, because each of these actors have put in the work, because they've bought they've got the audience in the palm of their hand, like it it really becomes this really devastating loss to not only the team but the audience as well. And you've got to earn that. Like you can't just expect somebody to feel for their character, and they've earned it in spades. Like and so that was a death that stayed with me.
Yeah, that one absolutely wrecked me this time around. For all the reasons that you said. But Tyler, what about for you? What do you think of the cast?
The my favorite. So my MVP of this movie might be Barry Pepper. I forget his so the character's name, but
I think
he
Jackson.
is the
Yeah.
most one of the most interesting. What is it?
His name's Jackson, I think.
Jackson. Yes.
Mm.
Okay, it's the
Yeah.
sniper. Yeah. He's one of the most interesting figures in this because he, I think, is the only one that is sort of glorifying this war a little bit. He believes that he is there for a purpose to kill the Germans. He's been given the gift of, shooting with the rifle to be able to do this, and he sees, purpose in himself in this war. But he's not this cocky jerk all the time. He does have, his moments of humanity, and he's not by himself, because in his mind he needs God to do this for him. His prayers over
Yeah.
every single shot he takes. There's a scene, actually, going back to the beach scene real quick, with a really interesting comparison that has the soldiers like panicking on the beach, praying for God, praying for anything. And then there's him at the top shooting, praying to God, but to do like in a totally different mindset. He's
Yeah.
on top of the world at that moment, whereas these other people are begging for God to help him, to help them. And it's this really interesting duality right in the moment that I don't think I ever picked up on before. And his death at the end does get me, just because I think he part of you is like, this guy's doing great. He's taken out so many of these soldiers. He's up in the tower giving the signals to Hank so that they know what's coming. And he's a really useful part of the team as a soldier. And yeah, when he finally gets blown out of the tower, I always just, I feel it, because I know he was such a big part of it. The death that really got me this time, though, is Fish.
Mm.
That one I think is the hardest one in general, because Upham is right there, and anyone watching, I can't imagine anyone watch this movie is not like, get up those stairs. Like
Yeah.
every single time I watch it, I know he's not going to do it. Every time I'm like, maybe this time he'll climb those stairs, because there's the moment when Fish knows he's gonna die, and that hits me so hard. It's He takes out his knife, ready to get the soldier. The soldier gets the best of him, turns it back on him, and he's resisting. And there's a moment where he's like, "Stop!" Like he has to say, "Stop!" No, like he knows he's not going to be able to stop this guy, and he thinks that in that moment that he can rationalize. He can, like, we're both guys. Let's just move on. We don't need to do this. And as that knife just goes further in, it just hurts so much, because like, Fish has kind of been played as the hard ass a lot of it. He's given Upham a hard time. He doesn't really show a little bit of any emotion, really. And then in this moment, he breaks. And yeah, with Upham right there too, it's so hard. But I don't look back at, and I don't like think of Upham as this like horrible figure for not going up, because in that moment you understand his character, you understand that pure fear that he's feeling in that moment, and the fact that if he goes up there he has to take a life, which he's never done. So there's a lot going on in that just one scene that I think is so powerful. But it is that death this time that, like I just like had to sit with it. I just don't think I felt it quite as strong before. But yes, that one with Wade gets me too, especially when they're like, "What do we do? How do we save you?" And he
Mm.
can't fix it. I think that, and I don't. I'm glad that there aren't these, like, there aren't so many of these like glorified or like monumental death scenes, because I feel like after a while it kind of would lose its weight. So you do get so many of the scenes, especially in that finale, of soldiers that we've seen briefly, but they just get dispatched. There's no moment for them, that they're gone. And I mean, that's part of the reality to it that I think Spielberg also infuses well. So there's that duality. But yeah, that one hit me.
If I
Oof.
may, sorry, just if I may, on Upham as well, I think it's again such an interesting thing that they set up with because of the narrative of like um understanding. I mean, he's a translator, he's not
Yeah.
supposed to be there, and he is. um and I remember there's the moment where Ryan says he's going to stay and fight with these brothers, like this is the job that he's been given. um and then I think it's Horvath and Miller that go and have a moment where they talk about what are they going to do. And he says a line, and I want to get it right, so I'm just going to look at my notes like real quick. um but where he says, let's earn the right to go home. And it's and it was that moment where I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's not going to make it, or it's him or up and like, or both,
Mhm.
because just because of the way that they've really set us up as the audience to really feel for every single one of these characters. So no matter who survives and who doesn't, it's going to be devastating for the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. The I want to come back to the Upham character because he's so fascinating, and I think when we as audience members watch a movie like this, and uh, obviously, it's like human nature to picture yourself as a character, and we're all like, I'd be Barry Pepper up in that tower, just taking out Nazis left and right. I'd be sniping them. They couldn't stand a chance. 80 to 90% of us are up them. We are
Yeah.
pissing our pants. We don't want to take a life. We are terrified of everything that's going on. But back to the fish death scene, which again was one of the two moments that my dad would not let me watch
Mm.
as a child. I think for him, it was the intimacy of someone being stabbed to death while being looked in the eyes.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on with that scene with the Upham character too. And then what ends up happening at the end with the Upham character, which I found kind of weird, but we don't have to talk about that. But also with the fish death, like he's the one Jewish American in this crew. And the fact that he's the one who dies face to face with a Nazi is like really, really, really tough, especially
Mhm.
because it's with a knife that he like stole from, or a knife that was like a Hitler Youth
Oh,
knife.
that's right. I forgot about
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like it makes an already devastating death like that much more devastating. And I can't imagine, like, obviously, Spielberg through his movies and like in life has talked a lot about how his Jewish heritage has impacted him. Like he made Schindler's List. We know how he feels for him personally. So I think it's like really, really significant that Fish is the character who ends up having this like really, really devastating death at the hands of a Nazi, like face to face. Which yeah, it just with everything else that's swirling on about that particular death scene, I just thought that that was also an interesting thing.
Yeah, and I even forget. I'm remembering now. There is that scene when they have captured German soldiers, and he is holding out his Star of David necklace, and Yuda, Yuda, like showing them, "I'm a Jew. I got you." And I
Yeah,
think that even, it shows his, his kind of just like hard ass nature a little bit, and just like how that's how he is. But and I think that's what makes that scene, yeah, so much. And I'd forgotten that that was the Hitler Youth knife that he had picked up. I didn't put that together. So, yeah, that one hurts.
yeah.
And I think that's obviously it's devastating, but then the reveal of it being the German that was let go,
Mhm.
I'm like, Spielberg, you didn't have to do that. Like we were already crying, we were already like devastated. But I think it just takes it up to like level 10 or even 11 because it's just like then the complexity of war. And I think I said it in the beginning where it's like the most noble thing that you can do is to kill this person. That's the I want to use words carefully, but like that's sort of like the lesson that Upham learns, and then he is able to kill him. And so like I think there will be people that'll argue like, oh, is this character development because he can now do what he couldn't do before, but it's not because it's so devastating because this is the reality of war. And so I think a film that just where there's no clean cut answer is just the juiciest of films where you can just like tear into this and you can like go to a coffee shop after seeing this and just process for the next hour and a half of just like how layered um how layered everything is, these characters are. It's just incredible.
I didn't realize that that's the dude who they let go. The guy who killed Wade, who was digging they were making him dig the ditch, and he's like singing "God Bless America" and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it's the same
That
guy.
that makes
Yeah.
I don't
Wade's
think I knew that either. Wow.
that makes Wade killing him at the end a little bit more complex than how
You
I
mean Upham?
originally read. Or yeah, Upham
Yeah.
killing him at the end. A little bit more complex than I initially read it.
Oh,
But I mean, it's an the way that German soldiers are treated in this movie is, I think, understandable. There was a rewatch that I did of this, and my thought process was like, okay, wow, this could be a movie about any group of soldiers from any country carrying out any mission, and sort of like the core thesis would still be the same. But I don't think that I necessarily agree with that. I do think that because it's Americans who are killing German soldiers, and like the German soldiers that we do meet are, uh, understandably terrible characters. Like that guy's like pretty one dimensional. Like he's a fucking scumbag Nazi. So like it's cool that Upham kills him at the end. Um, but after the Wade death scene, there is like a brief moment where we're almost allowed to give that guy a bit of humanity, which I think
Mm,
is interesting. And I think that's what Upham is trying to communicate and what he's dealing with. And then after he sees that that's the guy who kills Fish, he's like, no, this guy does not have any humanity within him. Like, it actually is the noble thing for me to go ahead and shoot him, which I get, like, Nazis are the worst. Shooting Nazis is like a pretty agreeable thing. But also, like, there's this whole idea that, like, you know, Nazis also have moms. Like that dude could have gone home to his own mother, and like from his perspective, killing American soldiers was like the good and noble thing to do. So if you like think about it too much, it becomes confusing. But I understand why that character was presented the way that he was.
I
Um,
I think there is a little bit of a. They don't quite. I think yes, it is. You automatically think of these German soldiers as the enemy, as you're supposed to. That's. I mean, especially as Americans, that's just like conditioned. But there is bits of humanity in them, not quite through dialogue or anything like that, but there is the moments like after they get they turn the tides on D-Day when there are surrendering soldiers, like red, like guns down, hands up, that Americans just shoot, just gun down, like it's nothing. And again, it's that heat of the moment. You have gone through D-Day, and now these people are surrendering to you after they've killed all of your brothers. It's much more complicated than sitting on my couch being like, "Ah, you shouldn't have killed him." It's obviously way different than that. But there's also when they explode one of the bunkers that has the turrets in it that the Germans are shooting down on the beach. Um, Tom Sizemore's character, I think it's him, says, "Don't shoot, let them burn." As they all fall out, as the German soldiers fall out of it, engulfed in flames, and so we're not saints. We're here letting men just burn to their deaths just because they're on the opposite side. So I do think that they Spielberg does do a good job of at least showing that we aren't true heroes and they aren't true evil. There is
mhm.
the middle ground there, and I think that Upham scene, I do kind of have, I struggle with that one a bit too. I don't know if it was a bit of like Upham feels he's safe in this moment and finally can do the thing without worrying about a significant fear of death coming on him. But yeah, I didn't notice that it was the soldier that they had let go, which I think does add an interesting level of continuum to their survival. But yeah, it is interesting. We do have some strange moments. Oh, and they I had written down one more here that there is that soldier, they beat him after they kills Wade. They go in on him. They beat him up and they turn him into a slave in the sense. So I mean, it's an interesting middle ground that I think is put in there, but it is obviously a little bit leaning harder towards we see the Germans as the enemy as they did in the movie. So I mean that's definitely part of it, but yeah.
Yeah. And again, like beyond sort of what we think about this in a real world context, I'm like going to lay it out there. I am in no way, shape, or form advocating for what the German war machine was doing in World War II. But there is some sort of like questioning of morality, right? Like they're mad at this soldier because he did a very immoral thing in shooting a medic. That's why they were mad at the Germans on the beach, right? They're they're taking out medics. They're taking out people who they shouldn't be taking out. They're doing they're yes, it's within the context of war, but they're also sort of going beyond what is seen as necessary or acceptable within war. So then the response from the American soldiers, the American soldier characters, becomes like somewhat justified. But also, I do think that Spielberg is calling into question, like, okay, like letting guys burn is pretty fucked up, you know? Um,
and
like
I
we
think,
were
oh, sorry, go
go.
ahead. Um, um, and I think again, it's like from as obviously from a non-American perspective, like there is a sense of like oh, Star Spangled Glory, like rah rah.
Mhm.
But I think it's, and we're obviously getting an American perspective, but I think even though Spielberg takes a certain perspective, it is still, he doesn't sugarcoat anything, just like he didn't in the beginning.
Mhm.
He's not trying to. I don't think there's ever a moment. There are moments advocating for either side of the argument of like, oh, this is glorifying war, but then this isn't. And so I think that there's both and I think again that's what makes it such an engaging film. If it was just the one, it wouldn't be as effective.
I think it. I think what we're trying, or what I'm trying to say, and I think we're sort of all on the same page, is that this movie definitely has a set perspective and like story that it's trying to tell, which
Mm,
is, this Tom Hanks figure is a noble character and sort of represents the American war efforts, nobility in World War II. But he does inject more nuance than that straightforward approach kind of is given credit for, which I think is kind of something that is true of like all Spielberg movies, where they definitely are very clear in what it is that they're trying to say, but he does inject more nuance than maybe we always give him credit for. And then sometimes he'll go like full nuance and it doesn't work for people. They're like, this isn't the Spielberg that I like. I'm thinking of like a movie like Munich that's like all new
mm.
nuance, that doesn't get the same kind of love that something like Saving Private Ryan does. Um, I want to talk a little bit about, you know, the context of this movie when it was made and some of the like the rest of the legacy around it. We'll talk about like it at the Oscars and all that because I think that that's an interesting part of the legacy of this movie. But when I was thinking about it, this movie came out in 1998, and you know, when we're thinking about war movies and specifically like American Hollywood war movies, there was a big boom in like, probably 50s, 60s that was sort of like rah rah, isn't it cool that we defeated the Germans? And then when you get into the Vietnam era, most of the war movies are more questioning of the morality of war,
Yeah.
questioning the morality of that war specifically, and like that's basically what we get from like 60s, 70s into the 80s even. There's not a lot of World War II movies that are made. And then this movie comes out and it kind of like reignited this boom in interest in America's involvement in World War II and like celebrating the nobility of the folks who were there, who stormed those beaches, who defeated the Germans. And then from there, like into the 2000s, you get a lot more movies, TV shows, you get like Band of Brothers and stuff about World War II. And it's interesting that Spielberg made this movie around the time where like the veterans who fought in that war were entering the later stages of their lives. So it was like one last chance for us as a culture to like celebrate them, which I thought was really interesting. And I think that's part of an unspoken or unrecognized portion of this movie's legacy. I don't know if either of you guys have given any thought to that or what you think about that idea in terms of what it did to reignite interest in World War II stories.
Yeah, I think definitely. I mean, there was that joke around the Academy Awards, and I don't know where the origin started, but it's like, yeah, if you want to win an Oscar, like make a World War II film. That was literally what people were talking about for a long time, and so I didn't think about it as the beginning because I mean, Schindler's List is still a class, technically a World War II film. So it's like,
Mm.
okay, was that the start of it? Obviously, that did really well at the Oscars, and then comes Saving Private Ryan. But then also, yeah, I'm thinking like Black Hawk Down. I'm thinking like Flags of Our Fathers, all of those. And yeah, I think again, I was thinking about this like years ago. Like, you cannot make the ultimate World War II film, but this is as close as you're going to get, right? I think,
Yeah.
um, obviously with like the golden age of television having happened like in the last decade or so, we can now explore like a mini series that could possibly do that. But in terms of a singular film, like that's never going to happen. Um, but is this the closest we're ever going to get to? I think so. I don't, because after this, I watched The Thin Red Line, which I'd never seen, and I was like, yeah, no, this is. I mean, it is a World War II film, but for me, it's not even in the same conversation. Like, it's got a lot of similarities, but it's nowhere
Mhm.
near as effective as Saving Private Ryan, in my opinion.
I like The
Um,
Thin Red Line a lot more than Saving Private Ryan.
oh
Weird
no,
question.
but I
I,
do. I mean,
I was
like
gonna go next.
that. I think that's. I mean, like maybe it was just the fact that it was like a 3 hour Terrence Malick film, and I'm just like, there's only so much philosophizing that I can actually do
Yeah.
in 3 hours. But
It's
I
not
think
really a
it's
war movie. Yeah.
I think it certainly looks into like the trauma of it a lot more, and the long-term effect that that produces. And so I think it's effective on a different way. But I think like maybe commercially, Saving Private Ryan appeals more to the masses than Thin Red Line is. Maybe that's a fair comment to make.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so funny. That's where I was headed next because I actually haven't seen it in a long time, and I had to look up what year it came out because I was like, oh, it was probably like early '90s, same year, which really
Mm.
surprises me. So, and I would be interested in seeing the box office differences because I would have to assume Saving Private Ryan beat it by a lot. But I feel like they are such of a different piece, especially with such different directors that have such different sensibilities in terms of
Yeah.
sentimentality and like memory and even just filmmaking as a whole. There's such a stark difference that I feel these don't feel like the same movie at all. They definitely feel so different. I do think that Thin Red Line is a bit more focused on the personal, even though I think Saving Private Ryan does that still really really well. I think there is a focus on individuality within the Red Line as you get so many characters. I mean, you're talking about casts. I mean, that cast is
Yeah.
pages long and doesn't even include all the actors that are listed in it because they got cut. Poor Adrian Brody, but it's it's such an interesting dynamic. I do want to watch Thin Red Line again. It's been a little while for me, but I think I'm in the camp that Saving Private Ryan is more effective for me simply just because I think I attach more to the story of it. There is just more of a story in general, I think, whereas Thin Red Line is a bit more focused on kind of just that day to day experience. And this is Saving Private Ryan is a very unique mission. I mean, it's a mission of hope. It's not going to kill a general or take the camp or I mean, rescue in a sense, but going to get a man and just take him back home. It's a totally different thing than we see in a lot of other war movies. I also thought of there's that World War II tank movie that came out in the 2010s called Fury
Hmm.
with has
Is
like
that
Shia
Brad Pitt?
LaBeouf's in
Brad
there and
Pitt.
a few others. Yeah, and I mean like that one has I think the goal of like going to a certain place and destroying a certain location. Um, uh, but I think that they do focus so much more heavily on like the actionated mission. I'm sorry, I don't know if that's a phrase at all, but like the mission oriented around killing or defeating or something like that. Whereas Saving Private Ryan is focused on a mission of hope, of getting
Mm,
this man home to his mom. And you can, I mean, just like they do in the movie, I always think like, is this worth it? You know,
Hmm.
why him and why not any of these other people that might have had brothers that died or might have a mom that's missing them or something like that. But I think that also is an interesting conversation for the movie, and that's what makes it, I think, stand out a little bit more for me. Is that it isn't a hunt for the Nazi general. We're gonna get him. It's got more to it than that, and it is interesting how many other movies around that time. You know, Black Hawk Down is so action oriented. I mean, it is about a rescue, but I don't know. Saving Private Ryan just always did have a different feel to me. I think the closest thing is definitely Band of Brothers. That's
Yeah.
easily the closest link in terms of characters. Like I think I see a lot of um, Tom Hanks's Miller in I forget the actor's name, but it's Winter, the main guy in Band of Brothers, one of the main guys. I
Mhm.
see a lot of connections there. So it's interesting that you have that, but yeah, Saving Private Ryan I think is the standout for me in terms of when it comes to things like this.
Yeah. It definitely feels like the definitive World War II movie,
Yeah,
right? Um, Tyler, I think your point about it being hopeful is really interesting,
Mm,
and not necessarily being a movie that's centered around, going out and killing
Yeah.
Germans per se. Like that's not the main focus. The main focus is to save an American, um, which I think again is like a really interesting perspective that Steven Spielberg has about the people who participated in this war from the American side, and I think that this movie goes a long way in doing really effective mythologizing around what it is that we did in World War II, which again, like this movie has its intended purpose and its thesis, and it like executes it at such a high level. I do think that The Thin Red Line is like not a World War II movie. It just so happens to take place during World War
Yeah.
II and is also effective in what it's trying to communicate in a lot of ways. Um, but in terms of like something that is a definitive text about this period of time in history, I do think that it's hard to top Saving Private Ryan. And like we all know that Spielberg is maybe the best director ever at mixing like broad appeal sensibilities and also being an extremely effective and inventive master of cinematic language. Like, I don't think anyone marries those two things better than him, right? Like,
Yeah.
you go see a Terrence Malick movie, and if you're really into movies or like really into his style of movies and you like his cinematic language, it's insanely effective.
yeah.
But
Much
that
more
kind of movie
niche.
is not accessible to most people. Where
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg, you can watch it as just like a person who sees 3 movies a year and you're like, that movie's rad. Or you could see it as someone who watches 3 movies in a day and you're like, that movie's rad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's why obviously just moving through to like its Oscars and the Academy Awards and how it was received and all of that. I mean, this is the perfect example of how effective Harvey Weinstein was in the late 90s and early 2000s, because you just look at it and you're like, how does this lose Best Picture to Shakespeare in Love? And I think there's a few answers there. I think the one is like, actors love movies about actors.
Mhm.
Um, it is also this really well known period of history, that has a very interesting story. And so it's not, I think Shakespeare in Love gets a lot more hate than it deserves. But maybe that's just coming as a Shakespeare nerd myself. So, um, but I do think that you've got these I was just looking at like what it won and what it lost, and I do think it's, every year there's the argument that like, oh no, but this should have won, that should have won, whatever. But there is only one winner. They can only crown one winner unless it's a tie, like which happens once every 13 years or whatever. But yeah, I think it's the awards that it did win. You look at the five that it did, which was cinematography, it was sound and sound editing, which was just like phenomenal.
Mhm.
It was director and I want to say, which was editing. I think it was editing, yeah.
Must have been.
And like, yes, those are fully deserved. I mean, the fact that you win a cinematography award over a Terrence Malick film is like an accomplishment in itself. um but I just think that it was it was really effective in telling the story and like crafting the story that is both narratively successful and spectacular in terms of its spectacle.
Mhm.
Quite amazing to watch. So, and I think a film that can do both is always like more appealing to, as you were talking about, Ref, like the guy that only watches 3 films a year and the one that watches 3 films in a day.
Yeah, Spielberg can cross or marry those two things better than anyone. Is Shakespeare in Love over Saving Private Ryan the biggest upset in Oscars history?
Quite possibly, hey. Um, Although the La La Land Moonlight debacle was also like,
Ooh,
but maybe for a slightly different reason.
that was a nightmare.
Um,
Yeah. You
yeah,
also have Crash over whatever didn't
Brokeback
win that year.
Mountain.
but I don't know that there was a movie
Oh, crap.
that Crash beat out that was as good or widely celebrated as Saving Private Ryan. Um, and then yeah,
Yeah,
you listed all the awards that it won, and it didn't win any like above the line stuff, but like usually editing and director, it's like okay, if you win those, you're gonna win Best Picture.
yeah,
We're winning both the sound categories, we're winning cinematography. So like clearly, it's like yeah, this is one of the best movies of the year. I don't know if Tom Hanks must have been nominated for Best Actor.
yeah. He
Uh,
was. He was the only acting nominee out of Saving
okay,
Private Ryan.
that's surprising. There could have been a few supporting actors that
Yeah.
were
For sure.
nominated. There were some great performances in
Tom
this movie.
Sizemore is so good in this, especially with Hanks. I think they make such a great combo. I could have totally seen him getting a supporting for this one.
Yeah, he's actually one of the most for me this watch around. I was like, this is one of the more impressive performances
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
this group for sure. Um, yeah, it's you know obviously the Oscars sometimes get it wrong. Sometimes you have a dipshit like Harvey Weinstein who strong arms his way into maybe an undeserving win. But I feel like that particular loss only has only helped Saving Private Ryan's legacy moving forward, where we all sort of agree like, yeah, this was probably the best movie of that year, the most deserving of the Oscar that year. And then also like, this was something that Thomas, I don't know what it's like in South Africa, but like here in the States, like this is a movie that's like always on TNT, TBS, FX,
Yep.
and
All
all
of
the
them.
rest. Like you turn on your
Um,
TV on a Saturday afternoon, there's a good chance you're gonna stumble into a scene of Saving Private Ryan. And like
yeah.
I think that's how I first watched it, where or one of my early watches with my dad, he was like, oh, this is one of the best war movies ever. Like you got to sit down and watch it with me. So I think all of that contributes to its legacy. What do you guys think is like the biggest takeaway from this movie's legacy? At gosh, almost 30 years after its initial release.
That's a good question.
I mean, I like to your question. I mean, Turner Classic Movies when it was still a channel on our cable was definitely Saving Private Ryan was there, and I was chatting to people about the podcast and being like, oh yeah, we're gonna, we should we're gonna record this episode and really excited for it. And people inevitably ask like, what are you discussing? So it's like, yeah, Saving Private Ryan and a lot of people know of it. Like random facts as well. Like we in our schools in South Africa, you do a film study in as part of the English subject, English
Hmm.
home language subject, and Saving Private Ryan has been on the list for many years as an option. I mean, rightfully so. Along with like The Mission. Which was there for way longer than it should have been. I mean, it was a great movie, but like for some reason, like I mean, I graduated high school in 2009, and the mission was still being studied up until that point as a film study. But a lot of teachers use that in their to teach film studies in like sort of 10th, 11th, 12th grade.
Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah, Tyler, what do you have on the legacy of this one?
That's an interesting question because I do like I take away like its message. The like actual thematic message I find I take away every time is one of Hank's final lines of just like earn this that you like this life that you've got.
Hmm.
And I think that applies so much to so many things about war too, because you get all these men who, some voluntarily, some involuntarily, were thrust into this war that they're just pawns in, that they don't have any real place in. They're just fodder. Um, and if you get to go home, it's that you have to earn what you've done, especially if you've killed men, if you've done all these things, you have to go back home and make something out of it. And I think that its legacy, especially legacy of war, with how much like PTSD is become such a big thing, and how much of an issue it's become. it's kind of scary to see like how I don't think that message has been taken as much. Or I mean, especially again, don't want to get too into it, but like with war going on these days, it just doesn't feel like there we have any sort of that semblance in there anymore. But in terms of its like legacy as a movie, I do find that you see pieces of it in yes, in curriculum. I think it's a big thing. I remember hearing about my like people I talked to in college did watch this in high school, like lots of people. It is part of American curriculum. It seems it's just a way to show kids. It is, I mean, I agree, it's a fantastic visual example of this is what men went through that day, and in this example, um, and it's not meant to glorify. I can't imagine. I mean,
Mhm.
eighth graders are probably pretty wild, but I can't imagine like any eighth grader or freshman, student watching that scene and being like, like I'm sure there are kids out there, but
Yeah.
I feel like it has to have that impact. And I think you can ask anyone like that opening 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan, and a lot of people have the same experience. I think that is specifically is a big part of the legacy for the entire movie. Just because if you tell someone remember something from Saving Private Ryan, 75% are gonna give you that opening sequence, just because it is so baked into what we think about of the movie. And yeah, I do think you see inklings of that hope in war in some other movies. I'm struggling to think of it. Oh, an example I can think of is 1917. I don't know if you guys were huge on that
Mm,
one. I was a big
Yeah.
fan of that when it came out. I think that is a pretty interesting comparison when it comes to doing a mission relating to hope in a sense, going to warn a general about an incoming attack, that isn't focused on, death or destruction or anything like that. And you have these, it's obviously a significantly smaller group, just two characters, but one suffers a significant loss and he has to go on by himself. And I think that legacy of like getting to the end, doing something that does make it all worth it, saving men's lives is a big part of it. And I don't know how much Sam Mendes took from Saving Private Ryan. I'm assuming that there's definitely, if you asked him, he would say yes, it's inspired by in a sense. But obviously, it's such a different filmmaking style and such a different story and a different war. So
Yeah.
there it does have its differences there. But I'm trying to I don't know if we've gotten anything like Saving Private Ryan since
No.
that. There
mm,
hasn't been, I think, something as big and as grand, but also just as like truly monumental to, I mean, American culture, but just like the conversation of war as a whole. So I think its legacy definitely still remains as one of the strongest movies. I think it's probably on all of the top 250 or 500 Letterbox, 250 IMDb. I'm sure it's in there,
Yeah.
and it's probably on that bunch of like a top 100 list, probably a bunch of those. But I'm trying to
And
think
it's in
of
the canon.
if we've
It's the
gotten
most important
anything
of those
that
lists.
has. Sorry, go ahead.
It's in the canon, which is the most important
That
of
is the
those
most
lists.
important.
exactly.
I apologize. I didn't bring that up as for the first one. Uh, but it's interesting that we haven't gotten, I don't think, something quite to its stature in the entire time since it's come out, which is pretty
No.
impressive, both a good and maybe a bad way. I don't know.
But yeah, I do think that it is the reason why we got some of the movies that we've mentioned, 1917, Flags of Our
Yeah,
Fathers, things like probably Dunkirk to some
Mm,
extent.
that's a
That
good
I
example.
was
I
gonna
was
mention
thinking of that.
Dunkirk, yeah,
that movie
because that.
Fury, Hacksaw Ridge. I don't think we would get right. Like
Yeah,
again, like these movies that do celebrate what it is that American soldiers were able to do in this war in particular. And I think that again, like because the folks who directed those other movies are not Steven Spielberg, that's kind of
Yeah.
why they're not able to reach the same sort of heights in terms of filmmaking achievement. But I do think that there's like a whole swath of movies and Band of Brothers, The Pacific, which I
yeah,
think Spielberg and Hanks both were producers
They were
yeah,
on.
part of, yeah.
Um, and again, like for me, like thinking about how this movie really did sort of reinvigorate, like especially as these folks were dying, like invigorating a sense of like pride and appreciation for the veterans who served in this war and like celebrating them in again a nuanced way that does respect what it is that they went through and what it is that like this war as a whole was. I do think that this movie, I don't think that there's any other movie uh, that touches this one in terms of how it is that it balances that subject matter, and effectively communicates the respect deserved for what people did, for what people went through, for what they saw, and for how it affected them into their life. You know, like the movie
Um,
ends with that Matt Damon character just like bawling his eyes out, hoping that he did earn his life because he saw so many people who weren't able to carry out like their hopes and dreams. And like his last line is like, "Tell me I was a good
Yeah.
man," to his wife.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, it's like such a powerful movie, such just an effective piece of filmmaking. I could go on and on about those first 20 minutes and how it is very radical as a filmmaking exercise for a number of reasons. And yeah, this has been a great conversation. Thank you guys both
Oh,
for
yeah.
joining. This has been so much fun. Any
yeah.
other, closing thoughts on Saving Private Ryan before we get into recommendations?
The one fun fact I didn't know where it would have fallen. There was no place for me to throw it in. But I remember hearing Matt Damon talk about how all of the regular company, not including him, did like weeks of boot camp and intensive soldier training, and then 6 weeks. I think it was 6 weeks in total. After the 6 weeks, he brought Damon. Spielberg brought Damon in for the last like 3 days
Mhm.
to like kind of build that like kind of contention of like, why does this guy only get to be here for 3 days? And it just I guess it was that's a really interesting way of like kind of getting the actors to be a little bit into the character's headspace. And also what a sweet deal for Damon. Like
Yeah.
just allowed to do it for a few days. But I remember hearing him talk about that, and he says like, these guys hated me, like they were angry at me, which is, I mean, I don't know. You want the actor to be able to do the work and like give a compelling performance, and I would assume that means like doing the soldier training if he'd never done anything like that before. But I always think about that of just like how Spielberg was so cheeky and just being like,
Yeah.
"All right, now come on, and now everyone's gonna hate you, but it's part of the movie." And I think that's a very fun and interesting director choice.
That
Yeah.
that's a great tidbit.
I think there's two things that I want to pick up on. The one is Tyler, you mentioned those like departing words by Hanks's Miller character of like earn it, and I thought that was so interesting because I interpreted that as like an inception kind of moment of like
Mm.
this is going to define this guy's life, like, and I think that's a lot of responsibility for somebody that gets to go back from war. Because it's so loaded. It's like I could only imagine like making small or big decisions throughout life and just being like, oh, I hope I'm earning it now. I hope I'm earning it now. Like that's so heavy, and I think that would be like as psychology has progressed over the last 30 years or regressed depending on where you but like I think it's more important now. Like back then it's meant as this, and I think still it's meant as this like honor moment, like make sure that you live an honorable life that's worth it kind of thing. And but I think a couple of years later you start to look back at it in the modern lens and say like, wow, that's a lot of responsibility to put on some person. um but then also, Tyler, to your point about the framing device, I was just thinking about it. I think again in a modern film, if this film was made like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe that framing device doesn't exist, and they just like bam
Yeah.
straight into the beach at Omaha. Um, and I think that I was like, I think that's what would change if that kind of film was like made today. Obviously, there would be a whole lot more differences, but I think that might be something that
Yeah.
alters the way in which we watch the film or the way in which it's framed, at least.
And as much as I am a little skeptical on the framing device, I think that the Damon's final line of "Tell me I'm a good man," that is so essential. I think that moment needs to be in there. So as much as I kind of go back and forth on it, I kind of wish that honestly, I think my issue is the fade. I think that might be it. I think it's just a little hokey and it's a little cheesy in the moment. I think if in my mind, if you pan away from Damon into like the sky and then like come back and he's the old man or something. I don't know. Maybe I think it's just the fade. But seriously,
And that
go ahead. Yeah.
and that's so weird because one thing I remember thinking about, like, oh man, this was 1998, and that fade is like so decent. So like
Well,
it
it's
just
not that
shows, you
bad of
know.
an effect. I just think I don't know. It's just that transition that I think just doesn't quite do it for me. But the tell me I'm a good man is so important to that idea of earning it and just confirming that I've done something with my life. I've made something out of all this death. So as much as I can kind of quibble back and forth on if that's necessary or not, that line I think needed to be in there. And it's definitely a Spielberg touch because it is the sentimentality that he does love to infuse and often does really work for me. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think as much as maybe I would have preferred it to just start on the beach, the tell me I'm a good man is essential.
It really brings it home. I do love the idea, Tyler, of you giving Steven Spielberg directing advice and telling him not
Yeah,
to
he'll
do
get there one day.
it.
He'll make something of note at some point. He's still working on it, you know.
Yeah. And then one last thing from my end on the sentimental aspect of the framing device is, I think we haven't really talked about where this movie sits within the context of Steven Spielberg and
Yeah,
his filmography as a director, and this is a very personal movie for him. Obviously, he made Schindler's List a few years before. I don't know that he made anything in between. Kind of an insane run if you want Jurassic Park and Schindler's List in the same year, and then took a break and then made
yeah.
Saving Private Ryan. Like
Amazing.
absolutely nuts. But I think this is around the time where Steven Spielberg is starting to be more forgiving to his father and not so much making movies about how much he hates his dad. And I'm pretty sure his dad served in World War II. I don't know if his dad was at the beaches of Omaha, but I think that that like "Tell me I was a good man" line is Steven Spielberg really. I almost called him Steven, like we're
Stevie.
buddies. Stevie um, is him in a lot of ways starting his like reconciliation process with his dad through his films, which we know kind of carried out through the 2000s and into the 2020s with the Fablemans, which is basically like him forgiving his dad and being like, sorry I made Close Encounters and ET about you being a shit dad when like really you were a good dude all along. So I think that this movie is like a starting point in that transition for Spielberg and like how it is that he's relating to his personal life through his movies. Obviously I don't know him, but like I think we can gauge some sort of uh, insight into who he is as a person through the movies that he makes. So I do think that that's like kind of an interesting aspect, that this is like a very, very, very personal movie. So if you just start at the beaches, it loses that personal feel for him as a director.
I think yeah, I agree with that. And I looked it up real quick. He did so Schindler's List is 93. He did Lost World, Jurassic Park, and Amistad in 97.
Oh,
And then 98 came Private Ryan. So he did take a little bit of a break, I guess, to do those two
Yeah,
movies and then nailed it with Private Ryan. So
that's yeah, what an insane
this
run.
this is my favorite Spielberg. I don't think. I mean, even as like phenomenal as Schindler's List is, and I mean E.T. I mean, we know his filmography, but like there was something about Saving Private Ryan that I think just hits every note perfectly, in ways that maybe one or two other films just like come short maybe in one area, but I can't find an area where this film is at fault, like, so for me it's my number one.
I think I'm with you.
It's a good number one. It's not mine, but
What is your number
Yeah, what
one?
is it?
um I think Schindler's List is one of the most impressive things ever put to film.
Mm,
Yeah.
It's obviously the heaviest movie you'll ever see. It's the hardest watch, but I think what he's able to do there is unlike anything else. It is in the canon, so there will be an episode about that.
mm,
But I think he made two. He released two perfect movies in that year, and they're so
mm.
different. Jurassic Park and Schindler's List could not be
Yeah.
more different.
Yeah.
But they're both perfect, and the fact that they were released within months of each other, and he was like
So wild.
editing Jurassic
Right.
Park while shooting Schindler's List is just he's he's nuts. This the dude is insane.
Yeah.
But Saving Private Ryan honestly might not even make my top 10 Spielberg.
Ooh, interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Um, Try to stay away from on the show doing like ratings and rankings and all that stuff. But if anyone's curious to know what 10 Steven Spielberg movies are above Saving Private Ryan, hit me up and and I can should we do some recommendations before we get out of here?
Sure.
Yeah,
Hell yeah.
that's good.
So um like we said, this is both of your guys' first time on the show, so we'll just quickly run through what is it we do with recommendations. Also, in case there are any new listeners out there who maybe aren't familiar, but for each movie that we introduce into the canon, we like to recommend 3 other things for folks to check out if they like said movie. Of those 3 things, at least one has to be another movie. The other 2 things can be any and everything else. It can be more movies, it can be a book, TV show, a video game, uh, an album, a museum, or a restaurant, or like a place to go. Really, anything can be as weird as possible. We like to have fun with it. The connections to the movie can be as loose or on the nose as we like, and any movies that we recommend cannot be in the canon. So no Jurassic Park, no Schindler's List, no Close Encounters, no E.T. Steven Spielberg has made a lot of good movies that are in the canon that we can't recommend. But yeah, with that, we'll go around the horn. Thomas, you can go first. Give us your first recommendation, brief explanation for why you're recommending it, or explanation first, then what you're recommending, then Tyler, then Raph, and we'll go through until we each complete our 3.
Sounds good. So my first one is actually one that we've spoken about already, and that's the Thin Red Line. And yeah, obviously the connection being coming out the same year. But there are like so many similarities because it also has this like great ensemble cast of like currently well known and will be well known Oscar winning and Emmy winning actors. John Travolta's in like one scene, and George Clooney only comes like right at the
Yeah,
end, you know. And so it's like it's this. But I think so. Um, Ref, as you pointed out early on in the episode, like it definitely is a more cerebral, or maybe I said that I can't remember. It's a more cerebral look at like war and what it does to people and what people are thinking about, and how they survive and how they battle to survive. So I think it's as much as I gave it a bit of shtick earlier on, like it really was a beautiful, like contemplate, much more contemplative. So definitely wouldn't recommend it if you're the casual moviegoer, but if you're looking to delve into something meaty, from an artistic point of view, something that's doing really interesting, then Red Line, you gotta check it out. I checked it out like I watched Saving Private Ryan, and then 1 or 2 nights later was like, I this has been on my list forever. I need to check it off, especially now.
yeah,
The war genre is like not one that I delve into often. So like so many that we've actually spoken about, I know of, but I haven't actually watched them. Like Flags of Our Fathers. I haven't done Band of Brothers. It's been on my list for years, and like just haven't been able to. So I started ticking them off after Saving Private Ryan with Thin Red Line, and hopefully that continues in the near future. But yeah, that's my first recommendation.
love that movie. I had it on my list of potentials, but I'm glad you mentioned it.
Cool.
Are we going
Should be
like
in the canon.
around like 1-1-1 or?
111.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll start with my first, which is sort of just the comparison through its content and just being a World War II thing. There was a horror movie that came out back in the 2010s called Overlord. I don't know if you guys have seen that one. Also has a pretty solid cast in it, but it is a horror movie based in World War II, based on Nazi experimentation, turning soldiers into monsters, sort of. Very, very different from what we're doing in Saving Private Ryan here. But I think that there's a really interesting attention to detail within this period setting and a lot of great focus on this team as they go through this nightmarish warscape that is already a nightmare because of the soldiers and stuff that they're fighting, but becomes this insanely dark horror story because of the monstrosities that the Nazi machine is pumping out here. And it's not perfect, but is it a fun, pulpy horror action movie that like kind of nails its period setting? I would say so. So if you're looking for something World War II that maybe is a little bit different in terms of sentimentality and just fighting in war in general, this is an interesting little difference, I'd say. And I think
Nice.
it came out in 2018. I'd have to check on that, but it was right around that line, and it's got some good special effects too.
Nice.
Cool.
I like that. I like taking us in a slightly different war movie direction.
I'll bring it back,
I'm
but
into it. I'm gonna take us for my first recommendation. I'm gonna take us fully away from war movies, and I'm gonna do something that's kind of silly. Um, and I hope it I hope it doesn't end up being like super offensive. But that opening sequence on the beaches of Omaha, right? It's a place where um, people are having their youth taken away from them. Their
Mm.
their life is stopped short at a very young age. Very unfortunately, way too many young men died on those beaches. Um, there's another movie about a beach that also zaps your youth away from you, but it's about a beach that instead of stopping your life short, it just accelerates it and it makes you old. I'm talking
interesting.
about M. Night Shyamalan's Old.
Interesting. Okay, this is not where I expected that to go. Okay.
Not a war movie, but really, I think this is an interesting peek into my psyche where I'm watching Saving Private Ryan and I'm like, man, none of these guys are going to be able to grow old, and they're on the beach. That reminds me of that M. Night Shyamalan movie.
That's funny.
That's
Yeah,
great.
there's not much else I can say, but that's my first recommendation.
That's funny.
Oh, cool, man. I still need to see Old. I haven't got around to it yet. Yeah. Is need is like in inverted commas.
Yeah. Um,
Okay. So number two, um, the category is very long Tom Hanks films that are absolutely worth it. And so this segue to that is don't I hope this isn't in the canon, but the Green Mile. So
not in
Framing
the canon.
devices
I
too
don't
at the beginning and end.
yeah, this is the thing. Yeah. So yeah, it just like I mean that totals in an over 3 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But just like another solid, like reliable Tom Hanks performance. Michael Clark Duncan as the inmate, just telling a really interesting morality story as well. Beautiful, beautiful film. Maybe I mean I think a lot of our listeners would probably have encountered it before, but if they haven't, like, yeah, that's my recommendation for number two.
That's
I
such a
haven't
good
seen it.
one. Yeah, I love Green Mile with all of my heart. Is one of my absolute favorites. So great pick on that. I'm gonna go to a book on this next one. Um, David Benahoff, who's the most people know him as one of the writers of the Game of Thrones show. He did a book called City of Thieves, and it is a wartime story, but it takes place in the Soviet Union as two soldiers, one who's deserted and one who's been imprisoned, are tasked with going out in the Russian war zone tundra to find a dozen eggs for a general's daughter's wedding cake. So it's this connection of just like this mission that is not related to the war almost at all. It's this totally separate thing that isn't focused on death or destruction, but along that road you are gonna hit some trouble. You're gonna hit some snags, and the two characters in this who are very different people. One is this kind of like snarky, uh, experienced soldier who kind of thinks he knows everything about the world, and this other one is this meek guy who's just been kind of stuck inside his whole life and barely even knows war. And their relationship builds so well over the course of this story as they kind of go in between like meeting other people that are stuck in these abandoned houses and having to survive on scraps, and their mission consistently seems impossible because everyone they bring it up to, they're like, eggs. You're going to find eggs during war in this country right now. Um, and it's this amazing story of humanity and of friendship that takes place within a really dark context. And I know some people might totally have written off David Benioff because of the final 2 seasons of Game of Thrones, and I am in that camp. But if you're interested in reading something that kind of falls into this line, I cannot recommend this book enough. It is one of my all time favorites. It's pretty short too. It's like 200 something pages, but man, it is so powerful, and I cannot recommend it enough.
Nice.
Oh,
What's the
cool.
name again?
So the name is City of Thieves.
City of Thieves. Nice. Yeah, that sounds
So
really.
sorry, you touch on something that I love, like a film niche film genre that I love is like this is the main story, but let's tell you something that's like
Yes,
runs parallel to it. And I
absolutely.
think, I mean, Saving Private Ryan could sort of loosely fall into that category as well. But I love that idea of, man, there was another perfect example of this, but those kinds of stories just like I throw out like, yes, I'm there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
check it out if you can. It's great.
that's that's awesome. I love that. Um, okay, good. A good second round so far. You guys are coming strong. I think I'm gonna do an album,
Ooh,
and it kind of feels like a stretch, but I'm been trying to make more of an effort to not just recommend movies, because then I'm gonna run out of movies that I could recommend. Uh, so thinking about Saving Private Ryan and something that has a really impressive opening and is then something that exhibits all of the great qualities of a particular artist and is something that many would call the peak or the pinnacle of their work and also maybe represents some kind of shift within their sensibilities. This is like one of my favorite albums, and I also know that this is a tricky person to be recommending, but I'm gonna recommend Kanye's "My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy," which I think has a really strong opening, similar to Saving Private Ryan, and then maybe it has some interesting stuff within it, and then doesn't totally hit on the ending for me. Kind of similar to my experience with Saving Private Ryan. Like I like the bridge sequence, but those action scenes aren't my favorite part of the movie. I think the opening is definitely a bit stronger. I think it's again, I think Spielberg and Kanye are maybe like looking at their craft in interesting ways and flexing their different muscles in similar ways in the two projects. Um, but yeah, obviously, like recommending a Kanye album comes with all the baggage of like Kanye West. So
Kanye.
yeah, this was kind of before he fully went off the deep end, but does also represent kind of like a shift in his sensibility, similar to how I was saying that Saving Private Ryan represents kind of a shift in Spielberg's relationship to his dad through his movies. So bit of a stretch, but I wanted to not just
hey,
recommend
that's
movies
good.
this
I
time
like that
around.
one.
Yeah. I always love listening to everybody's reasoning about like where the connection is because I think it's just like it's so entertaining and um so it's so interesting just to listen to how our thought processes that go into all these spaces. It's good.
We've done 100 plus episodes at this point, so again, like I'm really running out of movies, so I gotta get a little creative with home tying and other stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's round three. What do we got?
So my third pick isn't a movie as well. I was also like, no, let's just think out the box as well. The connection is also War and Steven Spielberg. He in 2011 he adapted War Horse. Michael, I think I'm going to butcher his surname, Kurpogo. Um, that's not his surname, but it's something
Yeah.
similar. And he wrote a book called War Horse, which is from the perspective of the horse. The book is actually written from the horse's perspective, and they adapted it into. I think the film came second
Hmm.
to the stage adaptation of War Horse. Um, and The stage adaptation for me is so much stronger than Steven Spielberg's film. In my mind, it's not a bad film, but the once you've seen the stage adaptation, it's just like there's a pretty big gap between the two. The stage adaptation, just the puppetry of the horses. It's got three people controlling the horses as puppets. And it was actually a little South African plug there. Those puppets were developed in Cape Town. It was a Cape Town company that did it. So
Hell yeah.
there's a
That's
little
awesome.
bit of like a little bit of honor there to toot. And so the puppetry is amazing. They've got two horses that are operated by these three puppeteers. But then also just like really minimalist setting, beautiful lighting, the way that they just use lights and projection. And then what rounds this off so wonderfully is they get an English, I think he's English, folk singer, Bob Fox. He does this folklore. He's almost the narrator figure, but he narrates it through song,
Oh,
and it is just the most beautiful. By the time the first act ends, like we were bawling. It was so emotional. And I know that it's been off Broadway for a couple of years now. It's not on the West End anymore. But the National Theatre Live actually did one of those recordings of it, so that is available.
oh,
But
cool.
Warhorse the play is like one of the best things I've ever seen on stage. So that's my third recommendation.
That's such. I
Nice.
when you said that, I was like, how did they get the horse to act on stage? That totally makes sense.
Yeah,
That's so cool though.
amazing. And there was a friend of mine that she did equestrian. She was grew up with horses, and she was saying uh, she really didn't want to go and see it because she was afraid of how they might not capture the full essence of a horse. And she said, like, within the first 5 minutes, she believed that that puppet was a horse. That's how effective it was. And I think they've done The Life of Pi as well, where the tiger is
Hmm.
all of those animals are puppets as
Ah,
well. Beautiful, like obviously not everyone's cup of tea, but like absolutely stunning artistry in it.
That's awesome. I
that's
love
so
that.
cool.
This is, I just mentioned that we have over 100 episodes. That might be the first time someone's recommended a stage play,
Ah,
Nice.
which
well,
is
I'm a drama teacher, so that's gonna they're gonna probably come won't be the
yeah.
last.
That's why we need you here, Thomas. I love it.
That's a good one.
That's amazing. That's a perfect third recommendation. Tyler,
That's good.
how do you follow
Hard to
that up?
follow that one, but I'm gonna kind of, I guess I kind of thought a little bit more thematically connected on these. I when I was watching this, I thought of the Last of Us video games,
Mm,
which I am a
Mm,
huge fan of. Both parts are some of my favorite gaming experiences I've ever had in terms of how rich the story is, these characters, and how bold some of the storytelling is in terms of kind of shaking your morality as a video game player even. But I was thinking about like the connection of like Joel and Miller, ironically both last name Miller, um, are like doing again this kind of mission that runs parallel to this big problem that's happening within the larger context of this world and the relationships that build here. But it's also the fact that everyone does have their own story within this world. I mean, in the second part you get Ellie and Abby both on different sides who are basically hunting each other, and you play both sides, so you're not stuck on like, oh, I can't wait to take this person out, because now you're on the other end of it. And I think that with some of the slightly complicated morality that Spielberg puts into Saving Private Ryan, it's definitely emphasized here as you. There's one moment in the second one that I'll never forget where you jump into a boss fight against Ellie as Abby, and you get to see all the skills that you've been using, but now they're
yeah.
against you, and that just by itself I think is just genius game design. But it's also, I think, really thematically resonant in like, everyone does have their own story within this world. Like Miller is a school teacher. Caparzo, Vin Diesel's character, he's got a niece back at home, and this girl that he picks up reminds him of her. These small little bits of the life that we used to live that is gone now, but we're still trying to hold on to it as much as we can. And I think that those games show that really well. And I was surprised that it kind of made a mental connection in my mind. But if you haven't played the games, I would recommend doing that over the show. I like the show. It's not quite my favorite. And I think that the impact of being like doing, obviously you're not doing the actions, you're holding a controller and doing the actions, but the fact that you are kind of committing these atrocities against people that are just trying to live, and you're just going about your mission. I
Yeah.
mean, it kind of falls into the idea of what a soldier does too. And yeah, I can't recommend him enough. I know some people are not fans of that second one. I disagree. I think it's fantastic, but I can't recommend him enough.
That's a
Nice.
really interesting connection. I like that. I'm not a big gamer. I have tried to play them. Like all of my gaming friends are like,
Sure.
these are the
Yeah.
best games ever. I'm more of a just like let me go around and smash
Yeah.
kind of guy when
It's
I play
always
video
fun too.
games.
Yeah.
So The Last of Us doesn't work for me because you have to like sneak around and stuff.
Yeah. And what's even
and
so funny is I am like genuinely terrible at Last of Us. I'm so bad at it. I still love it just because I don't. The story's a huge part of it, but like I'm so terrible at going around. My
yeah,
my aim is so off that like I'm not really committing atrocities because I'm just like, ah, damn it, just I'm missing over and over. So I guess maybe I'm doing them a favor, but I always do like those games.
yeah. I got to revisit them. I might check out the show.
I,
But
I
I've
do
heard,
recommend the show. It's good.
yeah,
I think some people unfairly really go after Bella Ramsey when it's a little bit of a different adaptation of the character. But it's got its good moment. I think they nail the zombie stuff,
yeah,
the special effects and the practical work that goes into that because that is again a big part of that as well. Is kind of the zombie aspect. But you are often I'd say it's like half and half fighting humans, fighting zombies. So there's definitely still a lot of that in there. But yeah, I recommend the show. But if you can get to the games, I really would recommend it.
yeah. I gotta try to
Nice.
pick them up again. I've heard they're great. Okay. I mean, those are both amazing third recommendations. My final recommendation is going to be so unbelievably dumb, but Saving Private Ryan is everyone's second favorite movie that features Giovanni Ribisi and Vin Diesel. Everyone's first favorite movie that features those two is, of course, Boiler Room.
What?
Have you not
Wow.
heard of Boiler Room?
No, I don't know this one.
It's the
Nope.
movie where they're it's like it's like a budget Wolf of Wall Street. They're like stock traders
Oh my
and
god.
they create this
Wow.
like shady stock trading and like options buying company. And I haven't seen it in years, but it's like kind of like a I feel like people who have seen it, it's kind of like a joke amongst folks who have seen it like that's actually an amazing movie. Um but it
That's a
Oh
what
stars
a
wow.
Giovanni.
combo. I would never. You said that, and I was like, what? What movie could this
Gosh.
possibly be?
What? I can't believe you guys haven't seen it. All right, so my joke fell totally flat.
I'm so
Um,
sorry.
that's fine. Check it out. It's a funny. I think yeah, it's from 2000. Um,
Okay.
Oh
yeah,
wow.
I can't remember if it's actually any good, but
It's got decent
check it out so you
reviews.
can be in on the joke.
Hey,
Um,
like it served its purpose because like we're gonna go check it out now. So
Now I have
yeah.
to. So
Oh my God, Jamie Kennedy is in this with a shitty little pencil mustache. Um, Scott Kahn is in it. James Caan's
oh
son.
yep.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Funny movie from what I remember, or fun movie from what I remember. But
Oh, Ben Affleck's in there too.
yeah, Matt Damon's buddy, so another connection. There we go. Uh,
Here we
Wow.
go.
um, Tyler, Thomas, thank you guys so much for hopping on and helping us do this first episode, season 7. I think both of you will be back for some more episodes along the way this season, which I'm looking forward to. We mentioned on the front end that both of you guys are contributing to Screen Age Wasteland. But if folks want to follow on Letterbox to get some more movie thoughts, where can they find you guys?
Yeah, I'm at Letterboxd. I think I am just my first and last. Tyler Harner, Harner. I'm always behind on my reviews, so I post things like that I watched a week ago. So you can keep up with that if you'd like.
Hell yeah.
I think I'm the same. I just want, I'm like, I need to actually log into like double check, but I think I'm just Thomas Riest, which is like priest without the P. That's the best way to remember it because the pronunciation and the spelling is exactly the same. Um, but yeah, so that's my letterbox. I went and saw the drama last week, so that's my latest one up on there. But yeah,
Sweet. I love that. Yeah, as of this recording, I think the drama is also my most recent letterbox log. So yeah. Um Screenagers, you can, you know, follow all three of us and all the other saw contributors on Letterbox. You can find all of our reviews and write-ups and lists and everything else that's happening on the website proper, which includes the Canon, both pod and written version. I think the written version is also coming back this month, so be on the lookout for that. We will be back here wherever it is that you're listening to us next week with another movie, another essential movie, another great episode, another fun conversation. I can't wait for it. Um, just look for us here again, whatever feed it is that you're catching us, whether you're on Spotify or Apple, or maybe you're checking us out on the Saw YouTube page where we have a ton of other great videos and stuff. You have maybe seen Tyler on Weekend Wrap with Jacob. You can also check out Jacob's Pole Position. You can check out Saw After Dark, which we kind of previewed earlier in this episode. There's another one of those coming out, and you can also check out Saw Exclusives, where there's a bunch of great interviews that are happening. Val is killing it over there. You can
Mm,
check out Dahlgren's Kung Fu Cinema, where he's reviewing older movies. Also, a lot of really fun stuff. There's great stuff happening everywhere
yeah.
at Screenage Wasteland. It's a ton of fun. These two gents will be back at some point. I will be back at some point. Screenagers, we hope you're back at some point. And as always, in the meantime, we'll see all of you folks in the wasteland.
Cheers.